Hey guys, Mr. V here again. Hopefully with a really quick tutorial video for you today, okay? So today what we're starting on is learning how to write good essays, okay? Every good essay has to have what is known as an outline, okay? A lot of you guys are probably already learning about this in English class. If your teacher teaches it to you a certain way, stick with that way for that class. But for me, guys, I'm just an elective. I'm going to show you the way that I was taught and the way that would be sufficient for our class. So I'm going to show you this really easy, simple formula. It's almost like a 1, 2, 3 kind of a deal, and then it has some subpoints. Okay. But just so you know, this is what you have to have a really good essay. An essay is kind of like a house. Every house has a really good foundation, which would probably be something like the idea or the topic or the thesis that you're going to be writing about. But just like a house, every good essay has to have a skeleton. Okay, so just like a house is built with like a wooden skeleton, and then the sheetrock and the bricks and the windows and the door and everything gets put on. The same thing for an essay. Okay, so you have to have the outline. All right, so here is a basic formula for an outline, and I'm going to explain everything as we go. So for every single part of the essay, it gets broken into sections. Okay, and each section is going to be represented by a Roman numeral. So we've got Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's see here. Make sure you guys can see that. Okay, so Roman numeral 1 would be the intro. 2 would be the body. And 3 would be the conclusion. All right, this is the basic structure that you need to keep for your essay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest of this here and then explain it. So each part or each section, each subsection gets a letter A through B, or A through C. So A is going to be our thesis. Alrighty guys, so that is our basic outline. This is what you want to use every single time you do a, see if I can point the camera a little closer here. This is what you want to use every single time you write an essay, okay? Can you guys see that? Alright, so first off, we've got Roman numeral 1, which is the intro, okay? So basically the intro in a lot of essays, you would have, usually like 2 parts, okay? You've got A, which is the first paragraph, which would sometimes be the thesis, although sometimes the thesis could be the thing that's stated at the very end of the intro, okay? So it might be like the last paragraph. And then you would go to the next paragraph, which is B, and that would be a background paragraph. So basically the first paragraph, the thesis would kind of give you, it would give the reader the basic idea of what you're writing about. And then B, the background, would kind of follow up on that and kind of give some extra information before going into the body. But for this class, we are not actually, I'm not going to actually require you guys to do a background. I just want to see you kind of lay out your thesis and kind of state what you're going to be writing about. So we're going to go ahead and just erase that. Okay, and so now we've just got the one paragraph, the thesis paragraph. By the way, this funny looking P symbol here, that just stands for paragraph. So anytime you see that, that's what you'll know that that's what that means. All right, so what is a thesis? A thesis is basically, and I'm just looking at some notes I wrote down here for the video. A thesis is basically a declarative sentence that states the main point. Okay, that's all it is. So this could be expanded out from a sentence to a short paragraph that is basically stating the intent or the main idea of the it's basically stating the point that you're going to be trying to prove. You're not getting into proving anything at the very beginning. That is what the body is for. Okay, so for instance, I put an example thesis. Actually, I put an example outline down below in the agenda. If you want to go and look at that picture that I posted in there, you'll see it. This is what I put in there. An example thesis would be something like this. Eating pizza too often is unhealthy and can lead to many damaging physical effects. Okay, so that's an example of a declarative sentence that is basically just stating the main point. It's not trying to prove anything yet. It's just making the reader aware of what you are going to be writing about. All right, so that would be your intro. Usually made up of more than one paragraph, but for our class, just the one paragraph about the main idea will be perfect. Okay. Number two, the body. Okay, the body is basically the main part of the essay. It's basically the meat and potatoes of the essay. You can also think of the body as basically like the battleground. Okay, the thesis is just laying out your argument, but now you've got to prove that argument or prove that opinion with facts. Okay, this part, the body, is going to be where you are linking the reader to any kind of like sources or citations to back up what you're saying. Okay, probably for this assignment I'm only going to have you guys do like maybe one or two citations. It just depends on the assignment. Okay, but basically this is the battleground. It always usually gets 3 paragraphs. So you got A, B, and C, which with 3 different paragraphs, and I put here with evidence. So maybe not every paragraph has a citation, but definitely that's where you're going to be proving your point, and you're going to be thinking of examples and reasons, logical reasons why. So for instance, if your paper was about, why you think that using Photoshop to manipulate people's faces or body is a bad thing, well then you could use this part in the body, these 3 different examples or these 3 different paragraphs to prove that point, and using examples, specific examples. Okay, so if you look again on the picture that I posted, an example of a good body would be using, and obviously we're using the A, B, and C, these 3 different paragraphs to prove different points. So each paragraph, A, B, and C, is going to be its own point. You're making a point with each paragraph. So for instance, A could be that, if we're talking about pizza again, A could be that it makes you lazy or it makes you lethargic. Okay, so the whole paragraph would be dedicated to proving the point of it makes you eating too much pizza makes you lazy, for instance. Maybe the second one for B, the B paragraph, would be pizza is greasy and greasy foods are bad for your heart. Okay, and you're going to be citing examples of why, maybe some medical studies on the effects of greasy food on the heart, for instance. I'm just giving you as an example. And then maybe C, the last paragraph, could be used to talk about how eating too much pizza could make you gain weight. Okay, and then you're citing, so each paragraph gets its own point. Okay, but it always goes back to the thesis of eating pizza too much is unhealthy. Okay, does that kind of make sense? So each of these paragraphs in the body is always referring back to the thesis. It's always proving the statement of the thesis. Okay? All right, last but not least is we have the conclusion. Okay, so what is a conclusion? Basically, it's what it sounds like. A conclusion is just the whole the whole essay restated and wrapped up in a nice little bow, kind of like that girl on the video said. It's just restating everything in a nice way. In some sense, it's almost like you're copying the thesis statement. But the only difference is the reader has now read through the essay and they have read through the evidence and the citations. So now the only difference between the intro and the conclusion is that it's being restated, but now with the knowledge of everything that you've used in the citations to prove your point. So once again, talking about pizza, a good example of, or just a basic example of a conclusion could sound something like this. In conclusion, based on the data that we have seen from the medical field, we can see that effects like heart stress, fatigue, and weight gain are good reasons why we should only eat pizza in moderation and with a well-balanced diet. Okay, so that's just an example. That's just one sentence, so it would be expanded into a bigger, more precise paragraph that would be expanded into a whole paragraph. But that's just kind of an example of a basic conclusion. Once again, talking about pizza, using pizza as an example. So guys, this is the assignment for today, okay? So what you're going to do is you are going to go down into the class folder and you're going to look at the practice activity down in the folder. You are going to create your own outline, okay? And basically, you're just going to pick something. If you read the instructions I posted in there, you're just going to pick something silly. Okay, I want you to kind of get your mind away from the digital media thing that you wrote about, because we are going to be developing those papers you wrote and using those later. But for today's assignment, I want you just focused on the art of creating the outline. Okay, so doing exactly what I did here is all I want you to do today. Okay, and basically that's what you're going to do. If you want to come up with your own example, that's fine. All right, maybe give me an example of I use pizza, so I don't want you to use pizza because don't use pizza, because that's my example. But say for instance you can't think of anything, then use the example of maybe you're trying to prove the point of why parents should allow monkeys as pets. Okay, so that's going to be your example that I put in the assignment for today. If you can't think of anything, if you can think of something else silly to try to prove a point about, that's fine, go with it. All I want you to do is focus on creating an outline. Okay, I just want you to wrap your mind around creating an outline and just labeling each part, and then not writing a whole essay, but just writing out each part. Okay, so there's an example of what I gave you. I don't want you to just do, I don't want you to just write intro, body, conclusion. I want you to actually fill in the blanks of what those are going to be. So once again, you're not writing a full essay, you are just writing the outline, but you're labeling the outline, if that makes sense. So if you're confused, just scroll down into the agenda, look at the picture on the example that I gave you, and just kind of follow that as an example. Okay, so this is only practice. I just wanted it to be something fun and silly for you to get practice doing, practicing writing and creating your own outlines. All right, so it's not a full paper. And I only gave you the picture as an example because I don't want you to copy and paste. I want you to create this from scratch on your own, okay? If you want to create it in a doc separately and then paste it in, that's fine. Guys, that's your example. That is your assignment for today. If you have any questions, please email me. I will be available all day tomorrow, just keeping an eye on everybody and the class as we go. God bless.